Hey there. I'm Jason Miller, president of the Special Programs Parent Advisory Council for Leander, also known as SPPAC. SPPAC is made up of parents and district leaders who have come together to advocate for students in special programs. Kiddos that are supported through things like IEPs, 504s. We host general meetings like the one you're about to watch, as well as other programs like informal coffee chats, special guest presentations, workshops, family social nights, and they're all designed with one purpose: to help families feel informed, empowered, and supported. If you find what you're about to watch helpful, I ask you to please check out our Linktree in the description, follow us on Facebook, and never hesitate to reach out at any of the emails that are listed below. We'd love to get you involved and to stay connected as much as possible, and we need you to know you're not in this alone.
My name is Angela Mead, and I'm with Region 13, but I do more than just a behavior specialist. I am a family parent liaison person that kind of does her job, but goes around training. I used to be a district leader for special education in Liberty Hill for 23 years. I was there. I've been a paraprofessional. I've been a teacher. I was an elementary lead and campus leader, and then I went to district level. But what I want to mainly point out is that I'm a mom. I'm a mom of a 26-year-old that has an intellectual disability and autism. And so I know I don't look a day over 30, but I do have a 26-year-old and a 25-year-old, and it was scary going to ARDs. First time I showed up, I'm like, I'm showing up for what's an ARD? Like, I'm college educated. I went to school to be a teacher. I was a high school teacher and was like, what is an ARD? I don't know what this is. And so I was like, cool. I walked in and there's all of these faces around me. And I'm like, why am I the only one here? I was like trying to solicit people to sit at the table with me, right? So I just wanted to give y'all some information of what to expect in your child's IEP meeting. That's what it's called in the rest of the United States, is an IEP meeting. Texas still calls it an ARD. 4 years ago, we were gonna call it an IEP meeting, but then the handbook came back out with ARD. So I'll use those words interchangeably. So if you're not from Texas, just know it's ARD. And it's with a hard R when I say it because I have such a hard accent and I don't realize it until later when I go to watch myself train. So what is the purpose of an IEP meeting? Who in here has already had an IEP meeting, right? Were you like, what are you even saying? The evaluator's talking about a DSM and oh, well, we did this and they're on that, and you're like, yes, absolutely. That's just what I was thinking, comparing with my notes, right? But their job is to develop or review the plan for your child. Sometimes they'll call it that at first initial ARD. That's when you're first jumping into the world of SPED, right? Special education. So that's going to be your longest meeting of your life. And you're going to want to have a glossary of how to look things up. And it's okay to stop them during the meeting and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you please tell me in layman's terms? If you hear anything, you have a right to say, can you stop for a minute and back up and explain what you're saying and the impact that has on my child and my family? If you hear anything tonight, hear that. It's to ensure those services. That's why there's a principal or an AP or sometimes a coordinator sitting at the table with you. They're the ones that are the decision makers that can say, yes, we can spend that amount of money, or we can authorize this service, because it ultimately comes down to fiscal responsibility. And they're signing that the school district will do that. And team collaboration, that's the biggest part, is it's a team, guys. I just did a training last week on how to advocate for your child, because it's important to be an advocate for your child. You are their voice in there until they get old enough to start coming to their own IEP meetings. All right, so who's going to be there? Again, this is when you're going to walk in and be like, I have never met you in my life, or you in my life, or you in my life. But you'll have you, and you can bring whomever you want to that IEP meeting. They need to know your child, right? Don't just be like, hey, Ashley, how you doing? You want to come to my son's meeting? Yeah, I just need somebody to sit at the table with me, right? Make sure they know about your kid, but you can bring somebody. Oftentimes, people will be like, well, I don't want to make the school angry or the district angry. And I say we because I just came out of that district position, so forgive me if I fall back on that. But that's what we want. We want a team there. This is team child. Put your child's name in there, right? You're going to be there, both parents, if you're co-parenting, guardians. I go to my nephew's IEP meetings, which are here in Leander. Don't look up any names. So with my sister, because she doesn't understand these other pieces of it, right? There'll be a district representative, again, principal, AP, somebody in that decision-making capacity. Your child, if they're over 14. In Texas, that's the age that you're required to invite the student. A lot of times schools will do it sooner. As soon as your kiddo knows, and there's no shame in having an IEP or a 504, there's no shame in it at all. I know that there was a stigma with that for some period of time, and there's no shame in it. We all get what we need in life, right? So it's especially important if it's during that transition time, because they know what they want to do when they grow up. As a parent, I thought I knew what my kid wanted to do, and I was blown away. And at the end of that 7th grade IEP meeting, I was like, I didn't know you wanted to do that. You never told me that. So it's important for the student to be there to have their voice heard as well. Even if it's just for a small portion. If you're like, my kid cannot do that. They cannot advocate for themselves. They cannot speak in front of a crowd. It's a great way for them to say, hi, my name is Angela, and I'm the student. Here are some things I like. Here are some things I don't like. Here's my favorite class. Here's a class I struggle in. Here's something I might need a little more help in. It is very powerful when it comes from the student. Very, very powerful. Education teachers. So you're going to have at least one general education teacher there. If they're in secondary, sometimes you're going to have more than that. You're also going to have at least one special education teacher there. Even though you may be like, well, she sees this person for this, but they also go to this provider and this provider and this provider and this teacher. Only one has to be there. So if you think about it, if you get everybody in that room, who's teaching the children? So they will have collaborated with the team to be able to report back on this information. An evaluation interpreter. So sometimes, especially if it's at 3-year ARD or IEP, when you're looking at the evaluation, are we still qualifying for these services? Are we still qualify under this IDEA category, right? You're probably going to have an educational diagnostician there, or perhaps a school psychologist. But a teacher, it can also interpret that evaluation. And other specialists, so related services people, if your child gets OT, if they get PT, if they get speech, if they get adapted PE, things along that. They're going to be there to talk about the progress they've had if they've already had an IEP meeting, and this is an annual. So you'll have an IEP meeting every year. I always get ahead of myself, so please forgive me. I do. But you will have an IEP meeting every year and more. If you can request an IEP meeting at any time to review things, okay? Here's what's gonna happen. Before that meeting happens, you're probably gonna either have an IEP facilitator or somebody in that role call you up or email you and say, hey, so your child's IEP meeting is set for this date. Did this date and this time work for you? And you have to have 5 days notice before that happens. Unless there's some caveats where you can waive 5 days, but those are usually not for initial IEP meetings, usually not for yearly IEP meetings as well. They'll give you this packet, the procedural safeguards, right? Or they'll give you the download for it, take it, okay? Even though I can wallpaper probably everybody's house in this room with the years of it changing from 2001 to 2025. There was a lot of trees that died for that before we went digital. Sad, really. But it's going to tell you where it's going to be, what time it's going to take place, who will attend in the meeting. Why are we having the meeting? Is it to review? Is it a triennial meeting to go over the IEP stuff? Is it the yearly IEP meeting? Is it a meeting because we're like, we thought we really planned well, but your student may need more support? Or we thought we really planned well, and we did, and your student is flying, so we're going to reduce some support. So those are some of the reasons you could have an IEP meeting. So I guess. Okay, yeah, I didn't even read it. I'm just like, I know how Vanna White feels. Number one, I mean, we look exactly alike. I always get mistaken for her. But I would not be able to do that. Pat Sajak would not let me do that. Those of you who are young, is Wheel of Fortune. Anyway. So look at what you're getting. You should get information before the IEP meeting. You should at least get a phone call. If these are our proposed goals, if it's an initial IEP meeting, your very first one, that evaluator is going to call and talk to you about the scores or email you about the scores and give you a little bit of an interpretation of what these scores mean, the baseline and all of the norms and all of those things. That way you can be a participant in the IEP meeting, okay? Know your rights. That procedural safeguards, know it. And it's okay to know it. It's okay to refer back to it. That's why TEA put it out there. And prepare your input. So a lot of times you can look at it and be like, okay, well, they had this goal. I don't really know how that translates to here. So ask questions when you get it. And you don't have to do that during the IEP meeting. You can have a conversation with the teacher before if there's an opportunity, right? If not, have that conversation in the IEP meeting. It's okay. It's to have, all of this is to have you better prepared for the IEP meeting so that there's no stone left unturned. You're not left in the dark wondering what's going to happen next. So they're going to start with introductions so you can know who all the people are around the table, right? And you're going to introduce yourself too. I was always like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm mom. Yes. So you're going to introduce yourself. Student will introduce themselves if they're there as well. There should be a meeting agenda. Usually, when you go to IEP meetings, do you see it projected up nowadays? No? Okay, no. I've been to IEP meetings where it's projected up. I've also been in where we have the paper agenda on the table. Either is fine. But you'll have an agenda, so you won't have to guess what's happened next. Because who loves surprises like that, especially in a meeting with a bunch of strangers that you don't really know, right? Yeah, it feels good, right? There's going to be that confidentiality statement. They're going to remind you, oh, hey, you can't talk about other kids in this meeting. This meeting is about your kid, and we're going to address their needs. We're not going to talk about other students by name. So even if you're like, but I know little Johnny messes with my little Walker. Johnny Walker, I didn't mean to do that. My son's name is, please stop recording right now. And my career is over. My son's name is Walker, sorry. One of my son's names is Walker. No, my other son is not named Johnny. I am not an alcoholic. But okay. But even if you know that other child annoys your child, you're not gonna say that name in the IEP meeting. That's another student. We're not gonna talk about what they look like or describe them, okay? We're gonna talk about your child, okay? And again, pro tip, don't hesitate to ask questions if you don't know what's going on. It's fine. Believe me, it's fine. Terminology, because we like to talk in, these little acronyms and things that we're like, yeah, well, TEA sent out a new IEP facilitator for ESY, and what are we even talking about right now? So it's okay to ask what that means, because in special education, we're so used to talking in acronyms. In education in general, actually. We love triangles and we love acronyms. And so the first thing you're gonna do and they'll say, will you please review the PLAFs? And you're gonna be like, what, a review of who? I was like, I felt like I needed closed captioning. I didn't know. I was like, PLAF? What are you even talking about right now? But that's the present level of what your student's at, okay? It's just telling you where they're at, giving you that baseline, giving you that foundation. They're gonna go over that review. Some of that is gonna be, state testing. Some of that's gonna be functional performance. It just depends on your student and their unique needs. They're gonna go over the evaluation data. That's when the evaluator's gonna speak. Could be your speech therapist, your OT, anybody who's done an evaluation on your child, even if they are not gonna qualify for that service or don't qualify for that service. They're gonna talk about why they don't. And classroom observations. Teachers and other service providers are gonna talk about what they see in the classroom, okay? And your voice matters, so it's important for you to share the observations of what you see your child does at home. What language works at home. You're invaluable to this process, so just remember, speak up, and it's okay. Even if you're like, I don't know if this is on the, it's okay to say, I don't know if we're gonna get to this on the agenda or when we're gonna get to it, but I did wanna make this point, and then the facilitator could say, yes, when we get to this part, we can talk about that. Okay, so it's okay to say, can I interrupt for a minute? And it's okay for you to interrupt me tonight as well. So they're gonna set those annual goals in the services. What are we gonna propose for the next 36 instructional weeks? Even if you have an IEP meeting that happens in February, that IEP meeting is gonna go over to the next February, those 36 instructional weeks. A lot of times I was like, wait, are we gonna have one at the beginning, middle, and end? I didn't know because it felt like I was having a million IEP meetings. When you have a kid go from 3 to 22, you go to a lot of IEP meetings. So prepare yourself for that. Specific, they're gonna come up with that specific plan. It's not gonna say, well, we hope to increase their literacy, fluency in 6 weeks. No, they're gonna have a prescription of what they're gonna plan to do. You're gonna see benchmark objectives in there as well. Achievable, what can we realistically get within a year? Okay. When I was teaching, when I first started teaching, I was like, well, it's okay. I can just go back to ARD or do an amendment if they master this goal and I could get another one. Then as I began to really get into my craft, I was like, no, I need to really think about where this student will be in a year, where I think they'll be, okay? Make sure it's relevant. Make sure it's addressing what was seen in the evaluation, okay? It's time-bound. Sorry, that cut off. It's gonna tell you within the next IEP year. If your student, maybe like my son had an intellectual disability, he had benchmarks on his as well, those objectives, and different districts call it different things. So I may be using a different terminology than what Leander uses, but usually there will be some objectives if they are getting a modified curriculum, okay? And they're gonna specify how often, where is it gonna happen? Is it gonna be in-class support? Is it gonna be in a resource room? Is it gonna be are you gonna pull the student out? Or are we gonna push in? How often are they gonna get speech, right? Is it gonna be 5 times a 6 weeks? Things like that. And what accommodations do we need? So an accommodation, I just want to briefly talk about accommodations, the difference between accommodations and modifications, because they sound very similar, and the way we use them in our everyday vocabulary, they can probably be swapped, right? But in education in Texas, accommodations are things that you do for the student to help them achieve what's happening within the classroom. A modification is actually a change of the curriculum. And I'm sure I see heads nodding, you're like, yes, this isn't our first rodeo, lady. I just like to put that in there because for a long time I was just swapping the words, okay? The assistive technology needs. That doesn't mean that every kid's gonna get an iPad or a Chromebook for communication. Sometimes it means a visual schedule. Sometimes it means a checklist, right? That's something that assists your student. We call that light tech, high tech, things along that. How are they going to participate in assessments? What kind of supports are they going to need in extracurricular and non-academic activities, okay? So you're going to talk about all of those sorts of things. You're going to talk about LRE, another one of those little acronyms, least restrictive environment. How can my kid get the education in the least restrictive environment? So can they stay in with their class? Is the least restrictive environment for them to be pulled out during this time because maybe there's some bigger gaps? But you're going to talk about that. That's the placement decision. And that's a lot of times where I, as a parent, will get hung up on, right? Because I wanted to make sure that my son got the opportunity to be with his general education peers as much as possible. But I also wanted him to have an education that would be applicable for him. And sometimes parents, and I'm going to tell you, I had a grieving process. And I see some of y'all's eyes, and I know it's something that happens in there. I am a funny joker, but I get in IEP meetings and I start crying for my kid. Number one, for the great things he's done and the celebrations he's done, but sometimes there is that grieving piece too, especially because, and I want to talk about that PLAF for a minute. TEA says we have to tell you where a typical child would be compared to your child. And sometimes that hurts a little bit. So remember just to take a breath and remember how amazing your child is and look at where they came from in their last IEP meeting, okay? I just want to do that caveat there. All right, so also you're going to talk about transportation. Do they need specialized transportation? Do they need ESY? There's that other thing. It's extended school year. Do they need a BIP, a behavior intervention plan? I like to call it a behavior improvement plan, but that's because I'm a behavior specialist. Transition planning. Remember, at age 14 in Texas, we start doing it. So you've got there's this piece here. I also train on legal pieces for Region 13 in special education in Chapter 37 and MDR pieces. So that's just saying there is new law out there in the last few years that if your student has been found a victim of bullying or is the bullier, that you need to have, there will be an IEP meeting to see if there's adjustments that need to be made. Maybe does your child need to have a social skills class? Some way to be able to advocate for themselves to say if something is happening to them. Or maybe they didn't realize they were being a bully. And I use that word loosely up here. That's not what this is about. I just want to tell you that's Texas state law that sometimes you may have, I didn't know we had an IEP meeting. Well, we have to because we have to address this, okay? All right. Any questions? Are y'all hanging in there? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, excuse me for being late. Are you going to have like an open Q&A at the end, or?
That's the plan, yeah.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. I'll take it. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So this is just saying, we finished the IEP meeting, right? In Texas, you have to come to a mutual agreement, at least at the beginning. There's other law, it could go deeper than that, but I'm just going to briefly touch over this piece. If you agree, they're going to have you sign initial, right? But they're going to go over that plan again. They're going to just briefly go over what happened. They're going to, that document review, or as I like to call it, hey, shake your hand out. You're going to have carpal tunnel from signing all of this and signing the IEP. And then you're going to get documentation and a copy of that finalized IEP. Now, at the end, they'll say, do you want this to start right after the meeting, or do you want to wait your 5 days? Because that's your due process. That's your time to think it over if you want to. There's nothing wrong with taking those 5 days. There's nothing wrong with not taking the 5 days. It's your discretion. But here's the piece that often happens. At least in the IEP meetings I was called in as a district administrator, right? So they're the only ones I got invited to. If a disagreement happens, you have 10-day recess. And then the school might say, hey, this is what we think we can do. Because you're going to have to say why you don't agree. You can't just say, I disagree. Like, why do you disagree? I just disagree. Because remember, it's a team effort. They want to see where can some consensus be made, right? What can we do? What can you do? It's a give and take, guys. It really is. And remember, nobody's like, man, well, my kid deserves like everything, right? Everything. But I also have to be realistic. There's only so much, especially now, that's all I'm going to say, that a school can provide at times. All right? So if you disagree, tell them why. And then read your procedural safeguards so you know what to do next. Okay? All right. So just some pointers. Remember, the IEP can be flexible. There can be adjustments made. However, it's going to be based off of that evaluation, okay, and off of the data that's already there. Advocacy. Again, you're the voice. You're the most important voice in that room, I would dare to say. Ongoing communication. Have those check-ins with the teachers. Don't do the standoff of, oop, we're about to have an IEP meeting. I got to put up my wall. I'm not going to be able to talk to you for a little bit. I had that as a teacher many times. Like, what did I do? And it was just the IEP game face. And some people have to do that, right? They have to take a minute and say, okay, you know, like, I really like you and you're friendly and those things, but I need to take a step back and look at this, okay? Make sure you keep the communication going and tell them that, hey, I'm just trying to, you know, understand everything that's happening. And you've got the Parent's Guide to the ARD process. SPED Text is a great resource should you need anything. Disability Rights Texas. And again, this quote is very important. Never underestimate your power, your voice in that meeting, okay? It is shaping the child's educational journey.